Hey guys, welcome back. I've made several videos about the Flood, particularly how they disappeared from the franchise once 343 took over. As many are starting to notice, survival horror games are doing really well right now. Things like Dead Space, Resident Evil, The Last of Us, all having either re-releases or new media like the TV show, and having a lot of success. So maybe it's time for 343 to dig back into the toolbox and release us a standalone game to bring back one of the most fearsome and awesome enemies to fight in Halo, the Flood. And we want to talk about doing the game right. I feel like Dead Space is the perfect example for that. Allow me to explain. Dead Space has been untouched since 2013? And then EA brings it back to both critical acclaim and pretty good sales. The xenomorphs in the game in many ways do remind me of the Flood, both how they appear and how they fight. But most of all, the reason why I think Dead Space would do really well as an example the 343 should use if they were to make a Flood-based spin-off is that it's a relatively tight story. You have the player character, Isaac Clarke, and a team being sent to investigate an SOS call from a ship that's suffering maintenance issues. You get there, you realize that a lot of bad stuff has happened very quickly, and you do your best to try and troubleshoot it, and then spoilers, eventually you can't. The ship, the planet, everything ends up being relatively destroyed and you escape. In many ways, just like Halo CE. On top of that, another reason why I think Dead Space would be a terrific example of something 343 should use to inspire them is because that game put on an absolute clinic when it comes to atmospheric and environmental storytelling. I mean, just listen to this. That kind of quiet and sudden sharp mechanical noises, and that whispering you hear in the background growing stronger as Isaac succumbs to mental delusions. That keeps you on your toes constantly, a type of environmental storytelling we really have not seen for on a while in Halo. Now, as for why I think Halo needs something like this, well, in my opinion, it's relatively simple. 343 has not been doing a great job building these big, overarching multi-game narratives. They just haven't. Not that the games are bad, but 4, 5, Infinite do not flow well together, tonally or narratively. I play the games, I like them, I've been Infinite 3 times, it's good campaigns, but I feel like they're really struggling to kind of have a tight, contained story. There's so much expanded universe material now, callbacks to books. There's 30 books for 2 games under 343's tenure. I really do think it's time that, I'm not saying that 343 should abandon the mainline games. Obviously not, because the Chief is my boy. But maybe Microsoft and 343 should consider having other studios build spin-off games for the Halo universe. No, Hidden Xperia just put out a really good pair of videos, and one of those he talks about, survival horror games, extraction shooters are really popular right now. And guess what? Halo has barely branched out and expanded itself as an IP. I mean, think about it. We've had the mainline games and then Halo Wars, right? I'm not going to reiterate everything he said in his videos, but I 100% agree that maybe it's time for 343 or Microsoft to chase genres that are successful right now, not replacing the mainline games, but augmenting them. And that's why I think the Flood lends themselves so well to that style of spin-off, because newsflash, survival horrors are popular, and the Flood, you could have a very self-contained character beat. It would be able to bring the franchise back to the roots, re-engage older fans, introduce Halo to new younger audiences that maybe they're not interested in playing Halo 6, Infinite, but this would get them interested, oh wow, this is a really cool universe, I want to know more about it. Microsoft, I know, is apprehensive about M ratings because they want to sell more games. Well, I don't know how to break it to them, but even when I was a teenager, I was taking my mom's credit card to buy map packs for Halo 3. It is not hard to do, especially now in the era of Steam games. Then let's talk about, okay, how should it look then? Well, like I said, Halo really needs to simplify things. I think they did that with Infinite, and I thought it worked really well. The universe in Halo, it's just gotten a little too big, and I don't think it's going to appeal much to more casual audiences. So when we talk about Halo 4 and 5 really digging deep into the EU, that's great for the subset of the community that's into that, but then for the rest of normal audiences, or maybe not normal, just casual audiences, you're going to alienate them. The flip side, original Halo games were simple space operas. Good guy, bad guy, figure the situation out. Well, guess what? The Flood in a game just like Dead Space would be a very tight, self-contained story that's exactly like that. It's a simple concept. Derelict UNSC ship. Spartan 4 is being sent to investigate. Oh no, they discover the Flood. Either the entire team or maybe just the protagonist escapes, the ship is destroyed, no more Flood, no more loose ends. Nice, easy, simple, self-contained story. story. You could add plenty of expanded universe material there in the background, things like, oh, how the Flood get there, was it a testing facility, was it an Oni experiment? But the core gameplay, oh, super simple to understand. I mean, if you think back to that's exactly how it played out in CE. Then we talk about the atmospheric environmental storytelling. Like I said, Dead Space killed it. I haven't played a game that has been so immersive, like listening to the audio, the tension, that like fear. Like it's actually enjoyable to me to be able to play a game that makes me legitimately afraid to play at night in the dark. I haven't felt that way with Halo in a long time. Nothing about the Forerunners ever scared me. The Banished, although a lot cooler and fun to play, not that intimidating. Then you go back to Halo CE, some of those Flood levels when I was a kid were legitimately hard to play through because it was really scary, being chased by screaming zombies and watching people being consumed. That idea of, going empty room to empty room, not even shooting, just seeing the story of violence, broken glass, the lone Marine screaming in psychosis because of what he's just seen, the trauma and tension. Honestly, even for as well as Halo 3 did, I thought that, the grave mind, it like taunting the player, it didn't really like bring out the horror aspect like CE did. And I know what you're saying. You're like, well, they'll never make a solo spin-off because every game, especially under Microsoft, needs to have multiplayer. I agree with you. Completely heard, understood. And that's why, hear me out. The game could play either a single player or 4-person co-op very easily. And if you have to have a multiplayer game, well, just like I was saying, extraction shooters are relatively the rage right now. Although I do not play them myself, I understand that a lot of people out there do. And if you're Microsoft and you're trying to make money, well, guess what? You could make something like that with the Flood relatively easy. Hear me out. You start in a ship, a city, a region, what have you, ground zero, at the start of an outbreak. As players, you're attempting to escape, either fighting opposing players or just NPCs to start that are the Flood. As you're killed, you become the Flood. And now it's a race of, hey, are you able to escape the area, taking out objectives, getting extracted, or are you overwhelmed and consumed? Maybe I'm talking out of my ass a little bit because I don't work in game development, but to me, that's, a genre that fits its well to a Flood, narrative. And if we're trying to, 343 and Microsoft wants younger audiences, they want to make some money because most of us are boomers these days with tight wallets. Cool, fine, but maybe we should do it right. And so far, we're lacking. I understand like my own faults here. I am a huge Flood stan, probably a little bit of a biased like narrative author because I've made several videos on the Flood, but that's because they're awesome. They were terrifying to me as a kid. We haven't seen them in a long time, and I know they weren't perfect gameplay wise. Believe me, Halo 3 fun-ish levels, not exactly fun adversaries, but they were a compelling and gripping enemy to face. Their disappearance after Halo 3 really never made much sense to me. And with how long it's been, it's 100% time to bring them back in a nice self-contained story that doesn't need massive exposition and expanded universe material. We've seen other franchises find success doing the same thing. It's time for Halo to give it a shot. It will frankly do nothing to hurt the community more than it's already been hurt, but it could actually really help us. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Be safe, take care, and enjoy the weekend.